Welcome to Uncovered with Jarrod Kimber and Bharat Sundaresan. All right, so far that worked. So
So far, so good.
it's our first live show, everyone. We're doing the best that we can. I'm sure Barrett's dogs will come in at one stage, and I'll have to go tend to my sickly daughter. But for
Oh,
now, I had some like grand plan for us to do a show, and we will do that one in the future. But
yeah,
then
yeah.
I realized that suddenly we had three tests this weekend. I realized that in the middle of trying to organize my family's fake Christmas dinner and deal with a full family of sick people. But let's start with the one that you were at, which is quite interesting. It was a test match over in 2 days at the Gabba, which is not really a Gabba thing.
No.
Gabba, almost historically, I would say it was probably one of the best pitches in the world for a very long time. Don't
Hmm.
think it's quite that good anymore. But it was certainly an absolute brilliant pitch for a very long time. I can't remember too many 2 day pitches there. What was it like on the surface?
Look, I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of this pitch, and immediately I was not surprised. In fact, I was saying this on commentary even before the game was over that uh, the subcontinental social media will go off
Well,
about,
if you like proof of that, Vickers has sent a message in asking if there needs to be more investigation on pitch tampering and subsequent match fixing. So yes,
well,
people are very excited.
people are exactly, and understandably so. I mean, you don't expect a test match in Australia to finish or anywhere to finish in 2 days, but especially not in Australia, and also because there was such a lead up to this as well. Australia v South Africa, one versus two, the best fast bowling attacks going up against each other, arguably. So all that played out, but I think I'll have to break it down, the pitch separately and then what actually happened in the match. I think with the pitch, what happened, Jared, is, and it kind of was heading in that direction last year as well. So the curator there, I think just to make sure that it holds together and there's something in it, uh, has been leaving a lot of moisture underneath, right? Like he did it last year, he did it this year. The major difference though was last year the sun broke out and the proper Queensland sun broke out late on day one, but definitely on day two. So it did kind of dry up the surface underneath, under all that grass, and it started firming up. So because I was doing the pitch report for SEN last year, so I was in the middle every
You
morning
had your
just
set
to.
of keys out there.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't allowed to carry anything. So it's funny because uh, even on day two, you could see some divots. I'm talking about last year. We went there, and I remember on day two, Joe Root was also there, just checking out the pitch, and I just had a little like I thought, great, right? I mean, when you're doing a pitch report, just ask the guy who batted on it, and also the opposition captain he happens to be. So we both agreed that yeah, I mean, the divots are a little more significant on day two than they should be. But then, as that test match played out, there were quite a few balls that misbehaved even last year. But because the collapse wasn't as dramatic as
Hmm.
it was this time around, and also because Travis Head once again played that kind of knock, where it was a chancier knock last year than what he did here. It kind of people didn't speak so much about the pitch, and it was also the Ashes and the first game of the Ashes and all that drama, and also not a lot of media was there. I mean, none of the English media was there at all. I'm sure that would have been a talking point if any of the English media had done the 2 week quarantine to be in Brisbane
Yes.
for that test. Don't forget. So all that happened last year as well. But this year, unfortunately for the curator, the sun never came out. Like not the, it didn't stay for too long. So what happened as a result is the moisture never really dried up. So and in comparison to last year, you had some really big fast bowlers smashing the ball into the pitch, starting with South Africa and then the Australians, all on day one. So already there were like some significant divots, inundations all around, all along the surface. And once the surface underneath gets dented, you can't do anything about it, right? You'll have to, like Ian Healy said, you need to get like a one of those machines that can like suck up the moisture and
Was
like
it on in golf when you have a divot and you have to like re-dig the surface? Like you can't do that on a cricket pitch,
you can't
right?
do that
So
on a cricket pitch, right? Like you need some suction pipe to just like pull it up. So you can't do that either. So he was really, left with no option, the poor curator, but to just see the his pitch uh, go down the drain in that sense, right? Like where by the end of day two, I will admit it was beginning to head towards it was
Yep.
uneasy to bat on
There
for
was a
large
lot
periods
of
of.
there was a lot of balls just flying over the top of the batter
Yes,
and the
yeah,
keeper.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But like, so it, I don't think it had reached an unsafe point by the time the game finished, but it was heading in that direction. By day three, if somehow this game had lasted till the third day or the fourth day, then it could have potentially reached a point where, who knows, maybe it might have been too dangerous to bat on. So all that played into this whole dramatic 2 day finish, which is literally a 5 session finish. I think if Zondo was literally responsible for taking this game into the last session. If Zondo hadn't shown a lot of grit and gumption, the way he did in the second innings, when he had been knocked over very quickly of just the second ball in the first innings, I think we wouldn't have even had the tea break on day two. That's how quickly the game progressed.
It is worth saying, and I've been saying this for a long time, that South Africa's batting lineup is probably worse than England's was when it was really bad.
Exactly. That's where
And
I was
so
coming in.
Dean Elgar, certainly an above average test match opener. Irwi, Rassi, Temba, they're all around average or below replacement level players. Zondo's new. We don't know, well, not new, but we don't know as much. Veriana, I like and could very well be a very good player, but is very early in his career. Then at number 7, you have Marco Janssen, who is more praying mantis than human at the moment. May end up being a test match number 7, but I would put no money on him being a test match number 7. And then you've got Maharaj and Rabada. It's been bad for a long period of time. They win games on their bowling. We saw in England, anytime there was anything in the wicket, it's like if they make 180, they've done okay.
Exactly. Absolutely right. Like I did the math and Dean Elgar is the outlier in that top 5. That's why I didn't put this stat out. The top 5 all over 30, right? Yeah, Elgar's played like nearly 80 test matches and he has a decent test average. And the rest, the other 4, they don't have great first class records either, right? Neither any of those guys.
Yeah.
And so the stat I was looking for is could this potentially be a top 5 in Test cricket with the highest average age but the lowest average batting average? It came, and I did a lot of math. Trust me, like all the Test numbers. I mean, a lot of them haven't played too many Tests. Like Zondo was playing just his 3rd Test, for example. The top 5 averaged 36, and I think the average age was 33. Like you make what you want of it, but that doesn't make for great reading, right? That it is a very weak batting lineup. So you have a pitch which has a lot of grass. Yes, Australia win the toss, do not bowl really well. If they'd bowled well in the first innings, South Africa would have been knocked over for 70 or 80. Trust me. They did not bowl well. The lengths were too short. I think at one point only 23% of the deliveries that they bowled were even hitting the stumps. So, and they made up for it in the second innings, and that's why South Africa rolled over. So you're talking about a weak batting lineup, and I mentioned this even before the test began, on a difficult pitch against a very good bowling attack, which includes Scott Boland, who can never take just 1 wicket in an over. He either does not take wickets or takes 2 or 3 every time he bowls. So they were really, I mean, even on a good pitch, I mean, I don't know what the MCG is going to offer. Maybe if it's like last year, then yeah, I've already told Isha it's a 2-day finish coming up again, or 3-day finish at max. But that has a lot to do with the inexperience and the technical deficiencies in the South African batting lineup. Like one dismissal in particular, I will bring up. Rassi van der Dussen in the second innings, Mitchell Stark's 300th wicket. Great ball, agreed. Stark has taken so many wickets like that, big in swinger. But you see where his bat is. You're talking about a test number 3. His bat is so far away from his body, it's like pointing towards cover, and then the ball kind of, sneaks in. And I was just like, at one point walking, I left the commentary box and I bumped into Sean Pollock, and he was like, and he summed it up. He said, yeah, that's a ball that would have got a lot of batters out, maybe everyone out, but it would have got most top order batters out, LBW. It should not have clean bowled you. That kind of summed up, and that's a great way of putting it.
I mean, you look at Rassi and you look at Temba. They are both almost the most the best actualized versions of themselves, right?
Yeah.
So we know that. I mean, I had Temba in my shortlist for most improved players. He basically went
Yeah.
from someone who couldn't make test runs to making test runs. If he averages 40 for a period of 3 years, you would have to say he's probably exceeded what we all thought he was capable of.
Yeah.
Rassi, again, it's taken Rassi forever, step by step, to get to a position to be in the South African team. If he was the sort of player who was that talented, he would have been in the team before, because it's not like
Exactly.
they've had so many great batters coming along. And I respect both of them very much. Temba had to go through everything from being, lambasted for being a quota player, from all this leadership stuff, from probably playing in the wrong formats, all these random things. And Rassi just step by step getting better as a player. But that's what those should be your fifth and sixth best batters.
Yes.
And they're not even close to that. It's Elgar. Maybe if the keeper gets good, he might be the second best batter in the side.
Absolutely.
It's a huge problem.
It is a huge problem, especially when you have, like you said earlier, Marco Jansen at 7. So you can play Marco Jansen at 7 if your middle order consists of AB de Villiers, Hashim Amla, Faf du Plessis, and Quinton de Kock. Then Marco Jansen at 7 looks like not a bad idea. But when you have, and credit to Temba Bavuma, the only batter in this game who batted for or lasted for over 50 balls in both innings. None of the Australians did. And considering we did get up to number 6 in the Australian batting lineup before they got to the 34 or 35 that they needed to get in the second innings. So none of them did. So he did show the composure, and Temba Bavuma and Kaya Zondo and Steve Smith also proved that this wasn't, and that's what I put in my piece as well. This wasn't a horror pitch, and that's why I compared it to 2002 when India toured New Zealand for those 2 test matches, where across 8 innings, one team got to 200. There were 3 half centuries across 8 innings. All 3 came in the first test. And in the second test in Hamilton, the highest individual score was 39. And I remember watching that on TV. I was much younger. I was still studying back then. And it was, you could, those 2 were pitches where, as a batter, you had no hope, no chance. This wasn't like that. Even though it finished in 5.5 sessions, those who kind of got in there found a way of surviving and scoring runs, like Verena in the first innings, Bavuma in both innings, Zondo. Travis Head, like what I said earlier, it wasn't as chancy as his innings last year at the Gabba or the one in Hobart. Again, very difficult conditions to bat in. He just came and started playing a lot of shots. Here he was 2 of 16 at one point, and who knows, right? If the outside edge carries to Dean Elgar and doesn't fall just inches short, this game could have gone in a completely different direction. So, I'm all for something different, like a 2-day finish. I've never covered a 2-day finish. I've done
you haven't covered enough England, my man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
so Shinod's put in the chat that South Africa are missing Keegan Peterson. I'm a big fan of Keegan Peterson. I think he's a very organised batter. For those who don't know, he averages 40 in first-class cricket.
Yes.
And about 32 or 33 in Test cricket again. It's the same sorts of players. Just on the other thing about the pitches, I think you and I probably completely understand that a lot of the way that the game is talked about is Anglo-centric, Australian, England. Yeah. England obviously write the game and plan the game and do all those sorts of things, rule the game, spread it around the world. Australia then dominates the game for, on and off before, probably the best team for a long time before the war, produced the best player. Then after the war, they have a really good period and then they dominate again. Then there's a new format of cricket and they dominate that, So a lot of what we think about cricket is through that Australian-English lens. And that'll be less so as the game spreads throughout Asia. The one thing I would say is that there is a fundamental difference between a pitch in Asia that spins a lot and a pitch in the West that seems a lot. One thing can be that it might seem a lot on day 1 or 2, but it might actually even out. Yeah. Spinners still have a role to play. If a pitch spins on day 1, it's very rare that it's not spinning more on day 2, day 3, day 4. And that's not the case. This is a different kind of pitch, though. I think, whether the curator meant it or not, if you're relying on the sun to break through the clouds, you should probably be penalised. But is it Rawalpindi that was just penalised for the second straight test?
Yeah.
But that was obviously Obviously, no one's saying that those are good pitches, but they both got one penalty mark. And I think you need 5 penalty marks before you lose a test match, which means they would have to do 3 more roads. So the whole thing's a joke. We actually now have the technology and the system in place to use Hawkeye to work out. We can look at CricViz's expected wickets or control percentage,
Yeah.
all these different, optometrics and, Kadamba metrics. There are all these people who are looking at
Oh,
this
yeah.
to actually go through it scientifically and go, do you know what? This pitch was a little bit tricky, but it still should have gone into the morning of day 4, right? Or the opposite can sometimes be true as well. And, everyone's playing and missing for a day and a half and they don't go out. We now have the ability to take it away from the old biases and even the new biases, right, of how we look at things. But at the moment, I think it's just really important to know that South Africa has maybe one of the most lopsided teams in world cricket in that they have five genuine bowlers in their starting 11 that maybe wouldn't make every team, but would make certainly 4 of them would make a lot of teams in the world. Maharaj may be a little bit further behind, but even he'd probably play for a couple of, a half the test playing nations at the moment. And then they have a batting lineup that does look like they, found it behind the local 7-Eleven. We're going to take a break and we'll be back in a minute because there's 3 tests. Like, as I said, there's tests everywhere. Although, to be fair, me and Bharat, I was going to say I was more excited to cover this one, but I feel like by the time I turned on the TV, the game was over. But I certainly watched more of this one than I did.
It didn't even reach Monday. It was over the weekend. That's how quickly this game finished. And before we go to the ad break, it's one of those, right? Both of us have covered a lot of test matches that finish quickly. When a game finishes in 2 days, you are kind of left a little breathless. Even about with things like changing your flights and all of that, speaking to the wife about when you will come back, and it was messy, to be honest. So it was a lot of new things to get used to thanks to what happened at the Gabba.
It really does. I mean, I'm trying to think of the one that I covered. I don't think it was one of the Ahmedabad ones I did for TalkSport, but I was writing a lot from another test that went in 2 days, trying to actually write everything when everything's on fast forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you might have 3 innings in one day, right? And suddenly you're just like, well, wait, where have I actually been? Anyway, I will have a break, and then after the break, we'll come back and we will talk about India, Bangladesh, because that's the next tab. No, we'll talk about Pakistan, England, because that's the next tab I have open on my notes.
You're listening to Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. Whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies, and now Sri Lanka covered. If you want to find us, the best way is to follow us on social media at 9994DM by downloading the 9994 app or Google 99.94 on podcast. We speak cricket.
That's what we're doing here on Uncovered today. We are going to try and do more of these as lives, all of them probably, if we can, from now on in, right across the network, but we're starting with me and Bharat, and I think Michelle and Santoki might be doing the West Indies one as well. And the idea is to make sure that we get the content up as soon as it comes out of our mouths. Pakistan match was interesting. I know I followed this a little bit more, so you can play the spectator a little bit more and ask me questions as we go, but you look at the first innings, and I think it was when Bubba was run out. And I remember I'd watched about an hour and a half of the test at that stage. And it was just a point when I was, really going to sit down and concentrate on it. And I was like, oh, Pakistan have got something going on here. And of course, the very moment I did that, Bubba was run out. So he was run out when they were, about 5 for 200 odd. But even then, they got themselves into a decent position. They ended up on 300, basically due to Azhar Salman, who we were talking about, I think last episode, about them having to shore up their batting a little bit more in order to make it work. But they get to 304, and looking at the pitch and watching it, I was like, I feel like this is okay. I think they should have got 360, 370, but I felt like this was okay. And then you have a look, and England fall to 145 for 5. This is the point in the story where you would kind of expect England to start scoring at 15 runs and over.
Yeah.
They actually, I think from that point on, they put about 200 runs on with the lower order, 4 runs and over. So still quick by any test normal metric, but certainly not something that
No.
you or I, it's no, I didn't even make a graphic about it. You didn't even go on one of your many media appearances to make a clip about it. But again, it shows you that sort of, that rear guard attacking style that they had. Obviously, Harry Brook is just a huge part of that, right? And then again, Pakistan get themselves into a very, very good position.
Yeah.
It's in some ways, it's probably the closest they've come. I don't know if they really got close to winning a test in Australia. Was there one on a fifth day in one of the draws where they had a chance? I'm trying to
Oh,
remember.
Pakistan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, when Australia was there, for sure. I think
Was it the first or second test? I know there was one. I'm just trying to remember which one.
No, in Karachi when Babar Azam and Mohammad Rizwan were
Yes.
batting. Yeah,
Yeah.
where they actually ended up saving the test. I mean, that was a great finish where at one point you thought maybe they could.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This was, if you look at this match, I would say that when Pakistan, they lost the 3 early wickets, but then they had that big partnership in the middle. And again, Babar Azam looked like he was, going to take the game again away. And again, they collapsed. The more I watched this game, the more I thought Pakistan probably are not that much worse than England at the moment, which is going to sound crazy because they're going to go down 3-0 at home. But what I mean is, in Pakistan, I don't think they're that much worse. But the difference of the form and the confidence and the spirit of which the two teams are playing, Pakistan just looked like a team playing, waiting to lose. Yeah. Whereas England, I mean, you got a teenager come in Rehan Ahmed, and he bowled some very good deliveries. But there are times I was watching him bowl going, is he the 5th best bowler in a good bowling attack? And yet he's ended up with a 5-wicket haul, run through them twice. Did he run through them on day one as well? I think he ran through them a couple of times when he was bowling.
Yeah, I got 2 or 3 in the first.
Yeah, did he get 3? Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember back to the first day, but yeah, he got 2 wickets in, and helped them out in the first day as well. I think they weren't too far apart. So I just imagine, right at the moment, looking at this Pakistan team, and we talked about it last week. We talked about the strategic problems and the holes within their lineup. And I'm actually going to do a piece based on what we were talking about. Right. So tactically, I think we're both spot on. But you just watch them, and they're facing a teenage English leg spinner who was playing club cricket, a couple of months ago.
Exactly.
And they do not look like they have any confidence against him, realistically. They put no pressure back on him pretty much all the way through. And look, I know he's a confident guy, and perhaps that is part of it. But I just felt like they were waiting for England to get it right again. And eventually Harry Brook and Rehan Ahmed had a couple of moments and they were gone.
Yeah, I think Pakistan are rattled. They're just a little shell-shocked with what England have brought to their shows. And I think they've also been just swept up by the whole narrative building around how England are playing Test cricket. And going back to that partnership with Harry Brook and Ben Foakes, I didn't watch it live, but just looking at those numbers, you're right. But that's the adaptability that this England team is showing, which actually should worry other teams. Yes, the maverick approach that they've taken to batting, especially in Test cricket, is one thing. But the fact that they also have guys who can adapt, and Ben Foakes can come and bat at a more conventional Test match strike rate and bail them out of trouble, means that they are allowing different cricketers to think on their own as well. I mean, we've spoken a lot on this show, Jarrod, about how it's a cultural revolution and how everybody seems to have bought into this aggressive form of Test cricket. But the fact that they can kind of not go from 5th gear to 2nd gear, but just take it a step lower to, like, say, a 4th gear and still show that positivity, tells you that maybe this revolution is going to be more widespread than what we thought. Look, and I'm not being a cynic here, but obviously it's fair to say that people will wait to see how it goes, how it works out when they play Australia next at home, whether they stick to it, what kind of pitches we'll get. And whenever they go back to India, I think they go to India in early 2024, if I'm not mistaken. So within the next 13 months, we'll know where Bazball or where this journey that the English Test team have set up on set out on with Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum ends, or where it goes, whether it takes Test cricket to the next level, or it's an experiment that will uh, not come to a halt, but kind of get altered at some point. But for now, they're doing everything right, and I think Pakistan are just not they've yeah. I mean, series is gone. There was a lot of emotion around Azhar Ali in announcing his retirement, and that happens in the subcontinent as well, Jared. Like when someone who's been around for so long, like Azhar Ali has, if we don't do farewells very well, I'll be honest. The foot just does come off the pedal. So Pakistan haven't really played this test from what I've seen, like a team who are hurt because they've been beaten at home 2-0, and they want to avoid a 3-0 ending. They've almost just succumbed to whatever England are doing, and like they've become way more reactive than what you'd expect from a home team to be. And it's sure, it doesn't help that literally they've had 3 different bowling attacks, right? Abrar Ahmed has played the last 2 tests, but I thought Nouman Ali was gone after he didn't have a great series against Australia, but now he's come back and he's taken some wickets. But yeah, it's one of those things. I think I remember when I was in Karachi, this very wise old man bumped into me. I mean, he was just a fan. He told me everything breaks up in Karachi. That's how it is. So he was talking. I mean, the reference was about the pitch, but everything else allegedly. I think he was also.
Sounds like he was threatening you now that you've said it.
Yeah, maybe he was. Maybe he was. Yeah.
Well,
but,
just in the chat, there's a couple of interesting ones. EKG says, did Pakistan not playing our test at home for a long time remain a reason? I mean, they've now played since 2019. They just played Australia. They beat South Africa at home. So and they play domestic cricket at home, although the pitches are completely different domestically to international, which might play a part. But it shouldn't be a huge reason. The other one I saw is interesting here is Sam has said Pakistan are playing like England were 9 months ago, which is remarkable. I just finished a little article on Azhar Ali. I don't know how many people know the full story. And, because he's become successful, we start to look at him as a proper test match batter. But it's really important to know that when he was, 15, 16, 17, he was a leg spinner who couldn't bat. And this isn't, when you hear that and you hear the Steve Smith story, it's like, no, Steve Smith, I'm pretty sure I've gone back to the first time he played for New South Wales Juniors, he was batting at first drop. Azhar Ali was batting like number 10 for, I don't know, whichever domestic under 15 side he was playing in. Completely different level of player. We're talking about something more akin to what we saw with Mark Richardson's Ravi Shastri, but probably a lot earlier it happened in his career. Probably happened in his late teens to early 20s. But certainly he was coming through the system as a leg spinner, becomes a batter. But he's a very, very limited player. I had a look, you like this. His leading scoring shot off seam bowling is the leg glance. And almost every other right-hander I could find of the top test scorers, and I think he's got since his debut, he's got the 7th most runs in test cricket, right? So we're not talking about anyone average here. We're talking about someone who's gone on to be a very top-level player. But every other right-hander on that list at the top, their top shot is the flick. Yeah. And he's probably trying to flick his and getting his to fine leg. The other thing I remember is just the amount of times in the last 13 years I've seen him play just a textbook straight drive, but never pick the gap and always hit it, to mid off or mid on over and over again. But it's been a brilliant career for him. For someone like us, he was a great story because you could see him not be on the level of batsmanship skill of some of the other players. And so he overcame that by being a lot more patient, by working on his game a lot more, by sometimes taking things out of his game in a way that even better players don't think about. So I just wanted to mention him. Anyway, we'll have another quick break. And then on the other side of the break, we will talk about, what's the next game? India, Bangladesh. There's so much cricket on.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all of our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all of our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation.
You're back with Jarrod Kimber and Bharat Sundaresan. We will go to India, Pakistan. I think both of us probably overlooked this test match a little bit. I have got on my to-do list to go back and see Zakar Hassan, who I think this was his debut test, wasn't it? He made 100 in the second innings. So I'd love to go back and have a deeper look. I saw some of it when I was looking around, but I didn't get enough. To be honest, once Lytton Das failed a couple of times, I lost all interest in this test. Lytton Das is now completely Bangladesh to me. I don't think there's... Am I missing something? Was there anything that surprising in this game that you saw? I know Shreyas Iyer made runs again down the order, but we kind of expect him to be pretty good in against Asian attacks in Asian conditions.
Oh, very much so. And that's right in his wheelhouse, right? Batting against spin. He does it as well as anyone does in India, the way he uses his feet, the way he never lets any spinner settle. I remember his innings against Nathan Lyon at CCI before the 2017 series, where he completely tore him apart. I think he made a double 100 against Australia in that game. But I think what a lot of Indian fans will take away from this game is Shubman Gill getting to 100. I think that was a long time coming in Test cricket, that is. And I was there when he made his debut famously at the MCG, walked out to bat against what Crickwiz called at that point, I think, one of the most unplayable spells or whatever metric that they use. But just watching it live, there was terrific bowling. I mean, Stark and Hazelwood and Cummins were on fire that evening. It was a cloudy evening. Agarwal had got out in the first over, but the way Shubman Gill batted and that one drive, I'll never forget. I've spoken about it ad nauseum when he jumped out to Nathan Lyon and drove him, and Nathan Lyon immediately turns around like, who the hell are you? I think that kind of, in my head, established him as a test batter. I did not expect him to wait, then take almost 2 years to score his first test 100. But it has come, and you almost get a feeling that this will just be the first of many. Another guy scoring the 100, I think, was Cheteshwar Pujara, who also took a long time to get to a test 100. His last one was a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But
he made 90 in the first innings too, didn't he? Which is
exactly.
probably the more important innings, but everyone's so fixated with hundreds that it gets ignored.
You know how it is. Like, people are going to forget about that first innings 90 and talk about the fact that he's back to 100 scoring form. But yeah, I mean, look, a few months ago, you thought when Rahane sort of was phased out, Pujara's time had come as well. He was struggling to get into, I mean, he played some crucial knocks even in England last year. He faced a lot of deliveries in Australia in 2020, 2021, took a lot of balls on his body, didn't score as many runs as he did in 2018, 2019, but he was largely responsible again for India winning that famous series. I think people got worried about him not doing a Pujara, which is not just batting for a long time, but also getting those big hundreds. So that'll, and you could see in the celebration, I saw some clips of him after getting to 100. He was a little more animated than usual. It meant a lot more to him. And I think the other pleasing aspect for a lot of Indian fans is the return of Kuldeep Yadav, who...
That's huge, yeah.
Yeah, that I think is huge because people felt that... Kuldeep was lost to Indian cricket in a way. Famously, Ravi Shastri had said after he played the Sydney Test in 2019 that Kuldeep Yadav is India's #1 overseas spinner. But then, he didn't play after that overseas.
He didn't play anywhere. Like, you go back to his record and he keeps disappearing from Indian cricket step by step. And you don't want to use the Y word, but there were certainly people within Indian cricket who believed that he had done that. And it happens to left-arm wrist spinners. Yeah. Actually, it happens to left-arm spinners a lot, that they lose their action. But with left-arm wrist spinners, because of the biomechanics, your body sort of collapses in a weird way when you deliver the ball, which means it's not as repeatable as a leg spinner. And if you look back, he hasn't changed that much, but he's just a little bit stronger when he gets through the crease. That has also helped him be... Gareth Batty hates it when we say spinners bowl quicker, but more direct is what Gareth Batty would say. And again, that just helps him be a little bit better. And he hasn't really lost that much of the subtlety or anything else. It's just that at that, what's he gone up? I think the CricViz put it up. He's gone up about 5 or 6 miles per hour, that's a jump. Right,
it is massive.
Who's the last person to have a jump like that, even as a seam bowler? Maybe someone like Southey had a jump like that at one stage. It doesn't happen that often.
No.
You don't see people put on that kind of extra pace. And so to be able to do that while keeping all the rest of it. And we've seen. Look, if I send a message to Matt Parkinson now and say, "Would you like to be 6 miles an hour quicker?" He'd be like, "Yes, please," and he's probably
Yes.
tried everything to be able to do it. So I think that is a really, really interesting story. It'd be, for someone, for some cricket journalists out there, it'd be really good to go through all those years, because I remember doing a piece on it and I was shocked at how little he played from
Yes.
almost from what you're talking about, almost from Shastri declaring him all the way
Yeah.
through. He fades out of the IPL
Yeah.
and he ends up being like a development player. Do you remember you probably won't remember this, but there was a period where Ben Folkes seemed to be training with the England squad more than he ever played county cricket. And we were being told how great Ben Folkes was. And we're all like, we're not disputing it, but is he going to play 2 county games this year? Or is he going to just be like at the, here doing some training drills again with the wicket-keeping coach? And that was years before Ben Folkes broke through. And Kuldeep's is more remarkable because he was there and he fell down. I do think it's a really, really interesting story. And I think for Indian fans going forward, if he is this level of bowler from now on, right, that's a huge thing in all 3 formats, isn't it?
Yeah, and interestingly or ironically, spending a lot of time with the Indian team without playing helped Kuldeep Yadav, because that extra pace that you speak about, the extra zip he added to his bowling, I almost saw it happen in front of my eyes in Australia during that 2020-2021 tour, where he was here for, I think they reached on November 12th, in 2020, they landed in Australia and they left nearly 2 and a bit months later. And Kuldeep Yadav was there for the entirety of the tour. I think played 2 white ball games and that's it. Everybody played but Kuldeep Yadav. And even Washington Sundar played that last test when
Literally everyone played. You played
everyone
2
played.
games, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. When Ashwin was ruled out of the Gabba test, the late great Shane Warne and everyone expected even we expected Kuldeep Yadav to finally get a game. But then the balance of the side, as we know, had to be fixed and Washington played. But during that series, I saw Bharat Arun, the former bowling coach, work a lot with Kuldeep Yadav, and it was purely on just getting that extra zip going through his, putting a little more shoulder, almost put a little more body. I'm no left arm wrist spinning action expert, but I just saw him put a lot more body into it, and just to get that zip going, and because he always had the variety, but the feeling with just speaking to Bharat Arun and just speaking to those who know what they're talking about, spin bowling, is that they felt that he was a little too, not loopy, but a little slower than you should be at that international level. So
He was also specifically very slow for an Indian spinner, right?
Yes.
It's been a long time. Look, if you look at, Indian spinners, in fact, there was a great clip a couple of years ago of someone putting up Bisham Beatty bowling, right? You just don't get Indian spinners who bowl that slow anymore. Yeah. And Indian spinners are probably at maybe not quite the forefront, because obviously you had Ajmal and Shahid Afridi in Pakistan. But I would say that Indians are very close to being at the forefront of that. And you see that specifically, Bangladeshi spinners and Sri Lankan spinners are a little bit slower. But in India and Pakistan, you do see that a little bit more pace, and it seems to be following that. So he would have stood out at a certain point, and the minute he stops getting wickets, trust me, as someone who has spent a lot of time talking about, Matt Parkinson, trust me, everyone behind the scenes would have been pointing at that lack of pace. I don't think it was just that. I really do think it was a physical change and just tightening his action a little bit more.
Oh, very much so. And on confidence thing as well. I mean, you've seen, for those of us who have seen Kuldeep Yadav for a long time now in international cricket and IPL, he is one of those guys. He is a confidence cricketer. He has a lot of self-confidence, but I think at some level his body language changed. I saw during that Australia tour, and just generally that couple of IPL seasons where he just kind of faded away, because for a while till the 2019 World Cup, Yuzvendra Chahal and Kuldeep Yadav had become like the deadly duo in the middle overs, right? Like they were supposed to. There were talk. I remember very vividly. There was talk around that period where India maybe didn't do well in a couple of test matches here or there. There was this serious talk of why not play Kuldeep Yadav and Yuzvendra Chahal as our test duo as well. So that's where his career was in 2019, and then it just kind of dipped, but he's got age on his side. I see a comment from Keshav saying, are we reading too much into it? maybe not. I mean, it's just one test match against Bangladesh. You
Oh,
can
I
say.
mean, for me, it's not about this one test match. It really has
Exactly.
been, watching him for a long period of time. The speeds are the most interesting thing. As I said, people just don't put on that speed, right?
No.
That is so. Even if he was averaging 30 to 32 when he came back, he's definitely a more consistent bowler. Which means even let's say best case scenario is he could be India's frontline bowler in limited overs cricket, and
Yeah.
then occasional third spinner when they want a wrist spinner in test matches. That's a good ceiling for him.
Yeah.
And it looks like he could do that. If he's better than that, that's even more exciting for India. Just on Bangladesh a little bit.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I want to have a look at it was a weird test for them. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I mean, Shakib made some runs in the second innings. They were chasing 500. I thought
Yeah.
from the bits I saw, I thought they batted okay. But Zakia, I've forgotten his name already. I said it.
Hassan?
Zakir Hassan.
Yeah.
So he's really interesting. So he averages over 40 in first class cricket, low 40s. I think it's around 40, 41, 42. But he made a duck in the game against India A, and
Yeah.
then in the second innings made 173. He failed in the first innings here, made 20, and then made 100 in the second innings. Really interesting that against good quality attacks in high pressure situations, he's made some big runs so far. I don't know much about his backstory or anything else, but I did look at him and think there was something of his batting there. But I think all things considered, Bangladesh basically, after maybe letting India off the hook a couple of times with the ball, just batted really poorly in that first innings. In some ways, it's similar to the South Africa test, isn't it? It's if you're going to allow the opposition to have that big of a lead, it's
No.
you're kind of a long way behind. But is there anything else? Are you working on anything at the moment, or anything else caught your eye that you're interested in?
No, I mean, I'm just going to take a few days off now that the GABA test has given me that opportunity. Like I said, I finished that piece on the flight yesterday about just a lot of horror story analogies. I don't know if all of them hit the mark, but no. What did catch my eye though is the fact that Rohit Sharma has played just 2 test matches since he took over as India's official test captain earlier this year. It's been a wretched time for him in terms of injury or whenever there have been test matches. He missed out on the 5th test of the series in England, where Jasprit Bumrah captained the side. KL Rahul has captained India a few times, like he did in this first test, and looks like Rohit Sharma has ruled out of the second test again. So it's interesting, especially at Rohit's age, where he's in his mid-30s now. Missing out test matches when he just become captain. I'm sure he's really frustrated with it, but it's how it's played out. Of course, there's a Tendulkar making runs again. So
I'm pretty sure I told you weren't allowed to mention that.
I know, but I just had to sneak it in. But no, I do have a fun Arjun Tendulkar story, but I'll keep it for another show.
We've all got Arjun Tendulkar stories, because he was literally at the Lord's nets for like 6 years. Like, I've seen him send off international cricketers with cream puff deliveries before. I've heard him talk his game up ridiculously compared to like test match players around him. And good on him. If you're not confident and you're I don't know if everyone knows this, but Don Bradman's son changed his name.
Yeah.
Right. Like, think
Bradson.
about that.
Yeah, I know.
And we, there are quite a few famous athletes who've done things like that before. I don't want to get to Emilio Estevez with this. Although I believe Emilio Estevez took his mum's name. That might be a separate one. But there are certainly famous people who don't do that. But he made some runs in a game. I suppose that's what, how much are you going to pay any attention to the IPL draft? What's your IPL draft? Because I know you cover Australia, but you got to cover it from an Australian point of view. Do you watch it, or do you just follow it when it's finished?
No. I do watch it. I love to watch the IPL auction. I think it's grown on me, and because the first 7 or 8 years I covered it very diligently. A few years I was at the venue, but mainly off TV. It was always like when I worked for the Indian Express, it was almost a given. Like IPL auction, Bharat will do it. So I started really enjoying it, the whole drama around it, and also seeing how it went from being one of those very rich Indian people sitting there and just showing off their wealth in till like say 2012 to actually becoming a scientific process. You started like you knew this team would have a certain formula to it, and that team, and then when you would see an RCB come out to an IPL auction with a new strategy, you're like, wow, okay, they've changed. So I do like to keep an eye on it. I think I'll be in Melbourne that day watching some training. So it depends whether I'll get to watch it live, but I'll certainly be following it. But I see a couple of comments which have caught my eye for sure. Nikon wants to know Sepultura, Cannibal Corpse, or Slayer to describe the Brisbane pitch. I think I'm going with
Cannibal Corpse. God, I haven't heard
Cannibal
those.
Corpse. Has to be
I haven't
Cannibal.
heard of them in so long.
I know. I mean, of the three, I think I'm more a Slayer guy, but I love my Cannibal Corpse. So I think it was Cannibal Corpse. Like Cannibal Corpse had that great ability to have like they would start off heavy, and then they would have like a Temba Bauma Kaya Zonda like middle period through some of their songs, the longer ones and especially, and then finish strong. Like there would be a drum solo in there. So yeah, this test match was more Cannibal Corpse than Slayer for sure.
Yeah, no. It's thank you for putting your comments in. As I said, we're going to do these live. Basically, me and Bharat have to fit this around our own lives. So it's usually late at night for me in the UK and early morning for him in Australia, depending on when we're traveling. I think outside chance I might be in New Zealand to see England, New Zealand, but I might end up having to cover that from home at the moment. But yeah, I've got the Pakistan piece coming up, which I thought,
Okay.
which is I'm just having a look at it from a strategic point of view of how they've somehow managed to make a batting and bowling issue out of that same sort of middle order. It's really interesting because if you look at their top 7 or 8 players, what we've seen from them in the last year is not ideal, but it's them trying to fill in the cracks. It reminds me a little bit of what South Africa did after Callis, in fact.
Sure.
Not that they're trying to cover up the same thing. But I'm sure me and Bharat will have plenty more, and we'll be back again next week to chat. So thank you to everyone who commented, and for all those who listen or are watching on Twitter or watching on YouTube or I don't know, wherever you all are in the world. Thank you very much, and we'll see you for Uncovered roughly the same time next week. And by roughly, I mean I have no idea, but we'll be around next week. There is something wrong in the cricket world, and while it may not be a conspiracy, there does seem to be a movement towards leaving more grass on the wicket, and thusly, the global batting average has dropped. If a similar thing has happened to you in your personal life, try Manscaped. Their Lawnmower 4.0 will help you trim any unwanted pubic grass. And once your downstairs track is taken care of, you can also use Manscaped's liquid formulations. So before heading outside, use the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant to stay cool in the heat. And if you've been playing too many games recently and you need some help with your strip, why don't you go and get their Crop Reviver? I think I may possibly have taken all of this analogy too far. But the point is, Manscaped sells items that allow you to shave your pubic itch pitch. Use the code REDINKER, all one word, which is the name of my podcast, and you can get a 20% discount and free worldwide shipping while you curate your special strip like a team of sweaty men hoping it doesn't rain.
That is brilliant.